637, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Good morning to you, friends. Along with Joan Jones, Johnny B, Dan Mandis here, and really one of the biggest stories of the day outside of Hurricane Milton is Kamala Harris really being challenged on her record or lack of record and so forth. And one of the big sound bites that is making the rounds is when 60 Minutes and Bill Whitaker asked her the question about her flip-flopping. And here's what happened. Johnny B, if I could get some audio, please. Thank you.
Let me tell you what your critics and the columnists say.
Okay.
They say that the reason so many voters don't know you is that you have changed your position on so many things. You were against fracking, now you're for it. You supported looser immigration policies, now you're tightening them up. You were for Medicare for all, now you're not. So many that people don't truly know what you believe or what you stand for. And I know you've heard that.
Oh, yeah, she's heard that from many people. And this is her answer. And then we're going to get to Matthew Hurtt. This was her answer.
I believe in building consensus. We are a diverse people, geographically, regionally, in terms of where we are in our backgrounds.
Right.
And what the American people do want is that we have leaders who can build consensus, where we can figure out compromise and understand it's not a bad thing as long as you don't compromise your values.
Matthew Hurtt joining us, our grassroots political analyst. And Matthew, you know, when your consensus building includes, and when your values, I would say to Kamala Harris, includes comparing ICE to the KKK, which Kamala Harris did, when she said law enforcement is not the answer to high crime, and when she said that Medicare for all illegals, I think that is part of what she says is her value system. It's a little hard to go back on some of those things that she said in the past.
You know, it's really hard to pin her down in this race because she has transformed her positions to be more palatable to middle America, because she believes in some of the most radical viewpoints we've ever seen from a presidential candidate in American history, and she doesn't want the American people to know about these things. And I think that's why she took this 60 Minutes interview to try to rebrand herself. 60 Minutes is a pretty broad audience. And throughout the interview, I think that, I don't think she did a great job doing that. I don't think she did a great job rebranding herself.
Well, there's a few times she, to be perfectly candid, looked like a deer in the headlights. And so I don't think that anyone, and I've got a few more audio bites to play, but, you know, broad brush real quick though, I would agree with you. Do you think that there's anybody who doesn't pay attention to politics the way that you and I do, that watched that interview and said, yeah, this is a woman that I trust, and this is a woman that I believe is competent? Because you could tell that even Bill Whitaker, the host, was asking her very direct questions and making her squirm.
And particularly the exchange on immigration, I thought was one of the strongest visualizations for the viewers to say, okay, she's not serious about this. And absolutely, this was a troublesome exchange for her, a troublesome interview, and I don't think that it convinced anyone that she is particularly trustworthy, especially when asked direct questions and her refusal to answer directly.
Well, since you brought up immigration, here's that audio.
You recently visited the southern border and embraced President Biden's recent crackdown on asylum seekers. And that crackdown produced an almost immediate and dramatic decrease in the number of border crossings. If that's the right answer now, why didn't your administration take those steps in 2021?
The first bill we proposed to Congress was to fix our broken immigration system.
You know, it's interesting, Matthew, because, and we'll get into the rest of her answer, but to put that in a bit more perspective, in reality, the first thing that Joe Biden did was he eliminated many of the policies that Donald Trump had in place, but generally speaking, put a moratorium on deportations, stopped building the wall, stopped remain in Mexico, embraced catch and release, and so forth. And so, you know, she keeps trying to say, well, the first thing we did was try to fix the problem. Reality is they actually made the problem a lot worse.
Well, absolutely. And if you take the J.D. Vance fact check moment from the VP debate and this answer on immigration, anyone who is concerned about our southern border or concerned about crime in our communities or concerned about a wave of unvetted illegal immigrants in the country has to say Kamala Harris has no authority here. The administration has failed on the border. And J.D. Vance really came to the VP debate last week with the facts, with the receipts, as they say. And it is a stark contrast for the American people to view and to say, there's one ticket who believes in securing the border, and there's one candidate who has not done any of that, and in fact has subverted the rule of law to destroy our immigration system.
Absolutely. This is the rest of her answer regarding Congress and how Congress needs to act.
Knowing that if you want to actually fix it, we need Congress to act. It was not taken up.
So the reality is that the Republicans in the House passed the Secure the Border Act, which Chuck Schumer didn't take up in the Senate, refused to even have it taken to a vote. And so when she says these things, it is so one-sided. Now, I don't know if the American people are that in the weeds about this stuff, but she continues to blame Donald Trump.
So he told his buddies in Congress, kill the bill, don't let it move forward.
But I've been covering the border for years. And so I know this is not a problem that started with your administration.
Correct.
But there was an historic flood of undocumented immigrants coming across the border the first 3 years of your administration. As a matter of fact, arrivals quadrupled from the last year of President Trump. Was it a mistake to loosen the immigration policies as much as you did?
It's a long-standing problem. And solutions are at hand. And from day one, literally, we have been offering solutions.
What I was asking was it a mistake to kind of allow that flood to happen in the first place?
I think the policies that we have been proposing are about fixing a problem, not promoting a problem. Okay.
But the numbers did quadruple.
And the numbers today,
watch.
because of what we have done, we have cut the flow of illegal immigration by half.
But should you
we
have
have
done
cut
that?
the
Should you
flow
have
of
done that?
fentanyl by half. But we need Congress to be able to act to actually fix the problem.
Matthew, that pushback on illegal immigration from Bill Whitaker and 60 Minutes, it really did seem to throw Kamala Harris for a loop. And generally speaking, there was quite a bit of pushback on some of her answers because they were full of platitudes and talking points. Do you think that she was ready for that?
The phrase solutions are at hand eliminates any responsibility from a lawmaker or the president from taking any action. So there are two things here. The president has an agenda, and Congress must act on passing those agenda items. And when you say solutions are at hand, you are not taking responsibility. In the immigration bill that you and I discussed months ago, there were some good ideas and a lot of really bad ideas that didn't actually fix the system. And so for her to throw this back at Congress and say, solutions are at hand and we're working toward this nebulous goal is laughable when Americans and communities across the country see what is happening. And when we have both a national security crisis, but also a humanitarian crisis. So it's two problems at the border, and her administration has refused to do anything about. Not only have they refused to solve the problem, they've subverted the law to make the problem worse.
One of the things I find interesting is just this notion that she went on 60 Minutes, and that was, I think, by all accounts, a swing and a miss. But she's going to be going on Howard Stern, and she also went on Colbert last night. And I don't know what's going to happen with Howard Stern, but if the Joe Biden interview is any indication, it's just going to be, one big, long kiss arse moment. Bottom line, though, is that clearly, as you and I have discussed, the polling is these days not going her way. And I don't see that she's doing anything right now that is going to turn that around. It does seem like Trump right now, at least according to some polling, he is the one that has the wind in his sails.
Some media outlets are calling this a media blitz, and it is the exact opposite. She's going on The View. She's on Colbert. She's on Howard Stern. She was on Call Her Daddy, some podcast, which gets about 170,000 listeners. Many of those listeners who, if they vote, are going to vote for her anyway. The contrast, though, is Donald Trump has been on some pretty wide-ranging podcasts with very broad audiences of new people. And there's a stark contrast. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are really good at messaging to these different audiences, and I just don't see the appeal beyond sort of the single woman demographic. And even that, she's slipping in some of those, on some issues, on the economy, on community safety, crime, and immigration. All of those issues the American people do not trust her on. And so, I think this week is an effort for her to say that she's out there, but the American people are going to be able to see through this, and I don't think she's going to convince many people this week that she is better suited to be president than Donald Trump.
Media blitz. All right, real quick. The interaction between Karine Jean-Pierre and Peter Doocy, and we're not going to talk about that much, except for the way that it began, which was Peter Doocy actually congratulating Karine Jean-Pierre on her big promotion.
Thank you, Karine. Congratulations on the promotion.
Thank you.
You're not leaving us in the briefing room, are you?
Unless you want me to. Do you want me to leave this?
No, sure don't.
All right, okay.
So, senior advisor, something to that effect, to Joe Biden, 3 months away from his leaving office. She's going to continue doing the White House press briefings. It has been well documented that the Biden administration has been reaching out to rich Democrat donors to offer her a job so that she would leave her position within the Biden administration. What's up with the, I'm air quoting here, the promotion? What's going on?
It's unclear. And if she leaves the briefing room, we've seen for now most of the administration, the talking points that she spews. She's often at odds with Doocy, who asks very good questions. He's very good at briefing room questions that draw a contrast. But she's a demographic selection, and it is,
she's a diversity hire. I'll go ahead and say it. She was a diversity hire.
Diversity hire. And it would be, because she's a diversity hire, it is impossible to fire her. So she has to find a paycheck somewhere, and she's moving into almost a retirement position where they just keep her around because they cannot take her off the payroll.
So does she get more money? I'm trying to figure out why 3 months away from Biden going away, and I'm assuming, perhaps I'm wrong, but when Biden leaves office, and who knows who's going to be the nominee at that point, or the next president, but what happens to her if Kamala Harris actually, Lord help us, wins? Like, does she stay within the administration, or do they send her out to pasture?
Well, what happens in Democratic administrations is when they end, those people the people who worked for the Democrat president go into nonprofits, they go into corporate speaking gigs, they get all these opportunities to, quote unquote, hang out until the next administration. I think that if Kamala Harris wins in November, which I don't think is going to happen, she would remain in government service somewhere, but it's unclear where.
All right, we'll have to see what happens. Really interesting, but always a great conversation. Matthew Hurtt joining us here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.